Once again, I'd like to welcome you to our podcasting session, Startup Shores. This is a podcast specially designed to get to know about the CXOs and entrepreneurs and understand how they are growing globally and making the impact in the kind of positions they are into right now. So, to get that understanding better, we have today invited Vinita Ramtri. She is, she is APAC COO from Delta Capita right now and have previously worked with HSBC and Barclays. We'll try to understand her journey and try to understand how she's shaping the current ecosystem into consulting and growing its impact with the current form with which is right now. So without wasting any time, I would like to welcome Vinita. Hey Vinita, welcome. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much, Akash, and thank you everyone else. I hope you enjoy this podcast.
Sure. So how things are right now, is it a work from home situation or you are in a hybrid mode?
I'm in hybrid mode, so it's not work from home. Usually, we work from the office for 3 days a week, and a couple of days is more relaxed. But I would probably not say a couple of days that I'm working from home. I'm out there in the city, attending conferences, meeting people. So I think, frankly, work from home is more and more limited now because a lot of firms are expecting people to be back in pretty much full time.
Office. Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense. I would like to know a more kind of introduction about you, if you're okay, because I think you also shape people's career, right? You do some that particular area. Okay. And you are right now into consulting and you have been in banking and risk management segment. Okay. So if you'd like to give a bit of brief, the kind of journey you have till now. Okay. And how difficult or complex it is, please.
Great, thank you. So where do you want me to start? Do you want me to start from the banking or do you want me to start from before the banking as well?
Uh,
Because banking is
anything,
probably 2012 onward.
right? Anything, if you can summarize in 5 minutes, that would be
Yeah,
perfect,
sure.
please.
So essentially, I'll start with the overall the banking journey. Essentially, I started with
Thank you.
Barclays in 2012, and that was the time when I moved from Scotland actually to London, and I joined Barclays. I was heading up conduct there, and conduct is sort of like a requirement from the regulators to ensure, following the financial crisis, that banks are conducting themselves in a very responsible manner, carrying out their duties to customers. So I started with that. And then gradually I moved more and more, as you just mentioned, in the risk and controls domain. Because my background before that was a change expert and a people person. People, I did a lot of training and leadership and development. So quite naturally, I went into support with conduct as a change expert, but then sometimes when you go to change something, you just continue to do it after you've made the change. So I
Right.
continued to do that, and I came as a change person. Then I continued to run the conduct. I was heading conduct for a while, and then I just quite organically shifted into the controls domain and started helping with regulatory requirements or figuring out how controls should be sorted. And gradually, then I moved into HSBC, as you mentioned. There, I was heading risk for a proposition called HSBC Kinetic. And that is, in summary, HSBC's challenger bank, sort of digital bank, where you don't have to go to the branch to open your account. You can just download the app and you can get your account. And that was all, it was all going good. I went there to start it. But the interesting thing that then happened was COVID happened just then. So actually, what we're trying to build became even more relevant and even more in demand because people needed to be able to carry on without leaving their houses. So everything went on steroids to say, hurry up and do this well and hurry up and get the app out. And, customers had an appetite for it. So that was me in HSBC. And the more recent piece that I'm doing in consulting is much broader because it's almost going from the banking world to then serving the banks from outside the banking industry because I'm still consulting, but I'm not consulting for energy or for government. I'm still consulting for financial services. So you're almost at the other side of the table to say, okay, listen, we know what you go through as banks, we know what sort of requirements you have, so let us help you from a consulting
Okay.
standpoint. So if you see, it's still solving the same problems, but coming at the problem from a different side of the table.
Right. Sure,
Does that,
makes sense.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I got the idea. It's more into not being the part of banking, but understanding the kind of problems that they might have. Okay, and looking solutions as a consultant to help them out. Makes sense. Uh, got the idea about your current portfolio and how right now you are helping in financial world. I just take this discussion ahead and want to know your journey with India. Okay, when you are part of Delhi University and Symbiosis, right? So how was your educational experience with India at that time? And uh, do you are you still connected with your friends, college friends, and how that community is right now? Please.
That's a really interesting question. I mean, you take me far back in my memories, but some of it are good memories, some of them are a little bit, sensitive. But basically, I
Right.
was always, so I come from a very traditional background. I'm Sindhi, and Sindhis, as you probably know, I don't know what are you, what are you, Akash? Are you Punjabi or you are
So I'm Bihari. I'm from
Bihari?
Bihar. Right.
Okay, so I'm Sindhi and I was from Rajasthan. So and I was born in a very small town called Biawar. And when we were born, the whole construct of the culture was that as a woman, you're going to get married. You don't have to have a career so much. You can study and all, but it's not the primary bread earner
Mm,
sort of focus on your education. And so I did my schooling first in Africa because my father used to work in Liberia. So I've done my schooling in Africa actually. After that, I came to Jaipur. I joined Maharani Gayatri Devi MGD school, did my schooling there. Then I went to, as you mentioned, I did my hotel management. But I didn't want to do hotel management. The honest truth is, I wanted to study in Lady Shri Ram LSR in London, in
mm,
Delhi, but I was not allowed. So I was not allowed to go to Delhi to study and everything. So I got the admission and everything, but I left it. I left it and I came back and I thought, okay, I'll just do my hotel management then. And I am very close to some friends. I mean, I have a WhatsApp group of MGD girls, 95 batch. I know all of them. I'm always there. I know what they're doing, whose birthday, what's going on in whose life. In that sense, if someone comes to Singapore or to London, we'll always meet and we'll always say hi. But I am, again, as you have probably seen in my posts or everything else, I'm very judicious about the use of my time. So
right.
you'll rarely find me chatting on WhatsApp or things like that, but I'm always there. If someone messages me and wants something, let's say someone is looking for a job, or they will say to me, Vinita, here's something, I need your help. I'll always respond. So yeah, in that sense, I'm in touch. They're all on my Facebook, my Instagram, all over, all over. I do come to India sometimes. So my mother and father were in Jaipur, then they've moved to Pune now. So I do come to Pune sometimes. And yeah, in fact, I'm coming to Lucknow in July because we've got a wedding. So yeah, I do keep touch.
Makes sense. So when symbiosis happened, by the way, uh, because
Symbiosis happened after my marriage. So in
okay,
2000, up until 2000, I was in Oberoi's. So after hotel management, I joined Oberoi's. Yeah.
okay,
And when then I got married, um, the point was, to try and get a 9 to 5 sort of job, not to come back home very late because we had
mm,
someone elderly that we were looking after. So I left the hotel industry and I joined WNS, which was a
mm,
training and development role. So if you go back to my
okay,
background, which is for anyone listening essentially, because this is not just about me, but sometimes a core skill takes you through. So if you
right,
imagine in MGD, I was a good speaker. I used to
okay,
do debates. I went to Pilani and all to do debating. So when I went to Pune, I got married and I went to Pune, and WNS really liked me for my speaking skills. So
Okay.
therefore, they took me as a training and development person, regardless of the Oberoi's background.
Hmm.
Right. So they say you can be a great trainer. So come and train for us. And at that point, I still wanted to study. So I was telling my son today that you never really stop studying. So in
Right.
2000, I got married. I went to Pune and I then had my daughter. My daughter was born that time. So I just get restless. So I did symbiosis while I was pregnant. I had the baby. So it's 2 years. But that time, actually, I was like I was working WNS and pregnant and doing everything and doing Simbi. So it was more
All
like I
right.
used to go for weekend classes and I went and give my exam.
Oh, that's, a very complicated journey, but makes
Yeah,
sense. And the reason I asked about Symbiosis is right now it's a very good college in India. Okay.
yeah.
And it have a very good impact and a good network of students. And it makes sense. And now I'd just like to know a bit more uh, into your working journey that you have, and which you have already talked about Oberoi and VNS, right? And later you have worked with Sky. So these are all non-fintech domains, right, with which you have worked, and your journey has started with Oberoi, later VNS and Sky. So I just want to understand the mental conflict or mental capability growth that you have seen, because as you have already talked that you figured out with the time going ahead that you are very good at speaking. VNS also complemented that, right? So these things are has evolved. Later you have gone into financial domain, okay, after these three verticals, that is Oberoi, VNS, and Sky. So how do you like to summarize it? Okay, that start and the end, and finally getting stick with financial world.
You can't say finally yet because yesterday I was only just speaking with other organizations like Shell and United Nations. So I don't know where I'm
Okay,
going next. So, but the
okay,
point is,
the
my
journey
point,
still continue. I got to know.
of course, the journey continues
Yep.
as long as we're alive and even after we're not there. But the point is, if I had to summarize this,
Hmm.
something that takes me back in time is when I was in school, when we had these psychometric assessments and psychometric tests. They come and they do these tests on your thing. And I don't want to sound arrogant, but I was classed as extremely intelligent sort of genius rating. And then the other thing was there's something called abstract aptitude where I got 99 percentile. Now, at that point, obviously, none of it, I didn't care. I just knew I'm going to get married. And my teacher said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I have to get married."
Makes
That was all
sense.
that I thought. But if you really
Right.
think about it today, that abstractness, it shows in your life then, because what you said, my journey is very complicated to you or to anyone looking at it. But to me, I'm doing multiple things all the time. And this has always been me. Even right now, you said, okay, I am in fintech or I'm doing, more tech related stuff or in financial services. But just now, you yourself said, I also do the people related things, coaching,
Right.
podcast. How many
Hmm.
people, how many risk managers are sitting on Sunday afternoon and doing a podcast? Do you see my
Makes
point?
sense. Yep.
So
Right.
I always have my fingers in many pies and I'm multi-thinking. So what you're saying is, how did I handle that change? It didn't feel like a change to me because when you are so busy doing something, you don't
Hmm.
realize that things are changing because you're focused on the doing.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Makes
so
sense.
you can see and say, oh, by the way, there was no tech in the first three careers, whether it was Oberoi's or it was WNS or it was Sky. I don't see it like that. I just see it as a natural progression.
Hmm.
Right. So it didn't feel like that to me because it was very gentle. And it was me saying, okay, I've got three skills. Now I'm going to acquire a fourth skill. And now I'm going to use all the four skills, or maybe another career, I will use three of the skills. So you just switch on. You know how you go to an Indian kitchen and you're deciding on which masala you need to use for which food. So
Right.
I just go with, okay, I need to actually spice up this one, spice up this one. And that's how I just keep growing the skill set rather than saying this is my only focus. I don't do it like that.
Makes sense. So choosing different verticals and figuring out what really working best for me, right? And
And what the customer
sticking
needs.
with it. Right.
No, I would say sticking with it probably less so because if you see, I keep changing. but it's
Hmm.
sticking with what is the requirement, what is needed
Hmm.
from you today. Like right now,
Right.
I'm talking to you. What you need from me, or any listener today needs from me, is the clarity. Now, what you
Hmm.
don't need from me is some other skill which is not relevant right now. You don't need my
Hmm.
writing skills, so I'm not using my writing skills, right?
Makes
I'm
sense.
using
A
my speaking
different. Right.
skills. So
Hmm.
you go to the table for anyone looking to further their career.
Hmm.
When you are going into a conversation, forget what skills you have. First, focus on what skills are needed. Yeah.
Right.
Then you say if these three skills are needed, two of them I have, third one I have to acquire. I'm either going to learn it, I'm going to insource it, I'm going to buy it, I'm going to borrow it. What am I going to do?
Hmm.
But you have to always focus on the need first.
Right. Makes sense. Absolutely. The need, along with, as you have mentioned, that there must be market that really looking for it, right? There must
Correct.
be some user who's be looking for it. Absolutely.
Correct.
I would like to take this discussion ahead and understand further more. Okay. And I would like to get clarity around the Barclay and HSBC journey that you have. Okay. And you have been in, I think, risk management department, right? And any, because these two are, if I can say, eminent firms, okay, and people as professionals look to work with these kind of firms. So any one takeaway for you from Barclays and HSBC, and how you have seen this journey till now?
I think one, I do consider myself really privileged to have worked for firms like this. And I absolutely loved my time there. The key takeaway, if you were to ask me for one takeaway, for anyone again looking to work for such firms, is don't get overwhelmed by the complexity.
Hmm.
Don't complain about the complexity, I would probably say, because a lot of times I see that individuals say, oh, this is too complex or this is too big. Jab tak you fix one thing, the next thing is broken. Because it's like,
Hmm.
when you have a very big bridge, jab tak you finish painting one side, the other side is already needs painting again, right? So,
Right. The work
so
continues always.
the work always continues. So these are banks or firms like this will have where work always continues, right? Now,
Makes
the
sense.
thing here is that the key takeaways, we have to be grateful saying we wanted to go to a complex firm. We
Right.
could have chosen to work for a small firm when the work does not always continue. So
Hmm.
if you go to a firm like that, then embrace that continuity, that complexity, the whatever it is that the bank is trying to achieve or whichever the firm is trying to achieve, and see how you can help that. But a lot
Right.
of times I see that, we say, okay, these are really eminent firms, I want to work there. And then the moment we get something, we become ungrateful.
Hmm.
Say,
That
kya,
happens. Makes sense.
yeah, kya, do we work for such long hours? This is no fun. And I just don't, I mean, I've never done that personally, I hope, because it's right from maybe where we started in the Delhi, where I couldn't go to the college. I mean, I
Hmm.
realize these little things that I'm just very grateful for whatever I get. There's no need to criticize any of that. So when people say, there's too much work, I say it's a career you chose.
Hmm.
Nobody's forcing anyone to work anywhere. Make a choice.
Right.
Yeah, so that's probably my key takeaway.
Absolutely makes sense. Right now, because whatever the decisions we are taking as a professionals are independent and we are responsible for it, right? And if you are not enjoying, it's our responsibility to find out a way to figure out what we really good at and
Correct.
how we can take ourselves, in the right direction that will give us our mental peace along with the work that we are enjoying. Makes sense.
Correct.
Uh, sure, you wanna add something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, and in that, sometimes you might need to take your risks, and then you have to be
Hmm.
okay with taking your risks, or say, I'm not going to take any risks. Like personally in my life, as we are recording right now in May, I'm in Singapore. I'm going to London next month. I'm leaving my current job because my current job, as you mentioned, is to head up APAC. Now, I cannot head up APAC sitting in London.
Hmm.
So, quite naturally, the job naturally ends,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? So, then I'm looking for what is the next challenge that I will be doing. So,
Right.
sometimes you have to say, okay, what is to get your mental peace, to get your balance, what is the price you're willing to pay?
Hmm. Makes sense. Sure. Uh, Right. I also want to, get a bit of understanding that how this Delta Capita shift happens in your career. What make you think to right now? It's a good decision to go ahead from being a fintech professional to consulting. Okay. And being the APAC CEO, how it started and how it is still now for you.
I think it's really interesting that you asked that. So I was never really in a fintech firm, but I was
Hmm.
within HSBC and I was doing things more closer to the technology aspects, which could be helping with the API governance. And I would say
Okay.
80% of my time was spent with tech, trying to
Hmm.
figure out how we're doing. So if you
Fair enough.
imagine big, large firms have these large areas, right? Business, technology, risk. So a lot of times, but even initially you said like I was with the risk management function. I've never been with the risk management function. I've always been with the business,
Okay.
which is, and then I help and advise on risk, for example. But this time I was helping and advising on the fintech aspects or banking as a service or embedded finance, helping with the API setup. Then how the shift essentially happened, which is essentially for anyone who cares to go back into my LinkedIn feed. If you go back to my LinkedIn feed up to last June, you will see a post where I've written goodbye HSBC. And basically, it was because I was obsessed with Singapore. I was obsessed, and I was very clear that I want to get my son to experience this education. So I had read about Lee Kuan Yew. I had read about how Singapore made itself from nothing to something, and I thought that is an experience that I want to get to my child, and I want to come here. So that was the main reason I left banks to find a role.
Hmm.
Delta Capita has been brilliant because I mean, one, I'm truly grateful for the fact that I got the opportunity, and other than that, as it's a complete different. If you imagine, actually, it's a reverse order for me because when I was with banks, I didn't have large teams. I was almost like a consultant in the bank advising. Here's how to fix
Right.
the risk, or here's how to fix the API stuff. Here's how to fix this. And I was managing projects, many problems, solving these problems in the banks.
Right.
But when I have come into consulting, I'm not doing consulting myself. I'm running the business.
Hmm.
So if you imagine that actually when I have come into consulting, I have stopped doing consulting on my own. I've got a team of 150 people. So I'm managing more the strategy, the P&L, the margins, where should we expand, what clients should we have, who needs training, who needs what sort of support, what are the client escalations, just things like that, understanding the
Hmm.
market, growing the brand, going to conferences, understanding what is the things that our clients are struggling with. So I'm
Right.
essentially in a very different role, which is across Asia Pacific, because I'm always got my eyes and ears on Singapore, but also what's happening in KL or what's happening in Indonesia, what's happening in Hong Kong, Australia, because you got to almost be sensing the entire space. So
Right.
that is the biggest change that has happened for me, is going from having small units to solve a problem to having a large team.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, but both of them have complete different values. Both of them are extremely exciting, and yeah, I hope that explains the different jobs.
Right. Right. Absolutely makes sense. And I just got a bit of clarity and also try to understand. You said you are into the API governance, right?
In
Uh,
HSBC, I was, yeah.
right. So, in banking terms, I also work currently as a deputy manager with one banking firm. So deploying any kind of APIs, okay, or building any capable new things, go through a lot of what I can say security measures, right? Multiple security measures, which are first set by the bank itself, second, secured by the government itself, that you must follow these measures while implementing. So, would you like to touch or talk about how complex it is for any kind of development, okay, or any kind of new initiatives in this particular banking system? And later, means because I think it for us it's around a year of job, to make something really secure and running in a very great way within India. Okay, so how your global exposure is right now with this API governance? Okay, and how complex it is,
So it's a really interesting question. Now
please.
you have to see this as the same problem, but you're coming at it from two different angles, right? So you are,
Hmm,
let's say, the API expert. You say, okay, this is the
hmm,
security standard, JSON, SAML. This is what I'm going to use. This is basically what are the standards I'm going to use. But
hmm,
where I come in to most of the problems is that I'm not an API expert. I'm an
hmm.
expert on governance. I'm an expert on trying to simplify the complexity, which I first mentioned.
Right,
There's complexity.
right.
Now, you could have one team sitting in Pune developing APIs, following certain standards. You could have that
Hmm,
team making APIs for payments. You could have another team sitting in maybe in the next building there making APIs for lending. And you can
hmm.
have another team somewhere else making APIs for whatever else, FX or whatever
Right,
else, right? Now, what
right.
happens is you may say, okay, this is the right standards to follow. And if you
Hmm,
don't have the same training modules and all, everyone will make different sort of, follow different standards. And I don't know, when you're building an API, let's say your stakeholder says to you, Akash, go make me this API. Do
hmm,
you have a repository that says the bank has already got these 1000 APIs? Can you reuse anything? Can you reuse some of the code?
hmm.
Can you, or if you made an API last year and that API is no longer being used, there are no calls to that API, does that API need to be demised?
Right.
So so what I was doing was a lot of that sort of overall. If you imagine the helicopter view, saying there are 50 APIs here, there are 50 APIs here, there are 50 APIs here. These ones have not got called in the last 2 years.
Hmm,
These ones, you know, they are identical to that one. How do you identify the duplicate APIs? So one thing I did
hmm,
as an example was a hackathon to say, how do you identify duplicate APIs?
hmm,
So then in that hackathon, people came up with machine learning AI to say, okay, here's how I can tell the API has the same endpoints. This is how 60% of the code is the same, or stuff like that.
hmm,
Because ultimately, when you really double click out of the single API and you just take the whole thing to a very high level, you might say, well,
hmm.
actually, we've got many more APIs than we actually need.
Right.
And to maintain the API, it might feel like nothing because cloud space, everyone thinks is free. Like
Hmm,
you've got the cloud or whatever else. I mean, I don't understand the full platform architecture, infrastructure to that degree of detail, but you just assume
hmm,
that there's no cost. But when you really look at it, when you've got to upgrade what's called like build packs and things like that, when you've got to upgrade, when you, let's say tomorrow I say there's a certain regulation is changing and this data privacy rules have changed and you need to make changes to all the APIs which are using this particular data point. So
hmm.
you're going to have to search all the APIs that are
Right.
using that particular point, right? So there's more work each time you have too much in the system.
Hmm,
So a lot of what I was doing was really first making sure only right from the get go, if I give you an instruction to say, I need this API, you should be able to see a library with very good metadata to say this API already exists. Maybe it exists in a different country, but how can I repurpose? And then basically
right.
the right metrics to say, okay, how many APIs are there? How many are duplicate? How many are reused? Whatever else. Does that bring it to life a bit?
Right. Makes sense. Sure. So, one thing I would like to add, which you have talked about, I was, into Financial Express CFO Summit. So, during COVID time, I get to know one CFO is pitching that during the COVID time, they need to understand the market and the kind of expenses that they are happening need to go down and figuring out in what way that really makes sense uh, in a bigger level to manage the expenses that is happening so that we'll remain in profit out of the things that has been happened because of COVID, right? And you said recently that there are multiple APIs and that is being used on the cloud. So nobody really look that how that cost is. But if we can figure out that 30% APIs are duplicate, right? And if we eliminating that kind of cost, okay, it add value, right, to the overall portfolio that I'll be able to manage that cost cutting in a better way. And I think whatever you are doing as a API governance is aligning with that. It's not looking that the APIs that is solving the problem, but to figuring out that what are the cost that company is bearing that really not needed, right? And need to be eliminated to, you know, it really not making any kind of conflicts or effects in the bigger level, but it's solving to maintaining the kind of cost that is going out of it. So I find it
Go on.
really genuine, okay, uh, to have that kind of understanding and solving the problems at that level. Yeah, you want to
Correct.
add something?
No, no, I mean, absolutely correct. And what you're saying is spot on. The additional aspects to add to any of this is, so first is that it's not taking, one is not all duplication is bad. So there's a lot of
Hmm,
conflict and conversation also around what is the right amount of duplication you do need for
hmm.
resilience and for whatever other reasons, latency and whatever other issues, you
Right,
need a certain amount,
security
right?
purpose. Hmm,
Correct. So you have to say, okay, these ones we need it. So not all
hmm,
duplication is bad, right? Next,
hmm.
then it's not just about cutting the cost, but it's also about reducing the risk because they carry
Hmm.
data. There's
Right,
data flowing in and
absolutely.
out. So there's a huge amount of risk also involved there. Third thing there is none of this is what you would call very fun work, right? Because you're going to go
Hmm,
to people to say, oh, I need to demise it, I need to demise this. So it's not what you'd call sexy work. It's not growth, say, I'm going to grow the business by this much.
hmm, hmm,
So that's why things like this get overlooked. So a
hmm.
bit like your house, and I always relate it to your house. Sort of, this is more like cleaning the house versus decorating the house. And everyone wants to do the
Right.
decoration, but no one wants to do the cleaning.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. I'm relating to it, right? Please.
yeah.
Sure, sure. Makes sense. Out of the blue, I just want to know, with the banking and with consulting, right? You have been previously with banking, right now you're with consulting. Which one is more challenging? And anyone, for me or somebody who is professional, okay, uh, how do you tell them that uh, you are more suitable for consulting, okay, or the mental capability that you have is more suitable to get into fintech world, something like that? Would you like to comment?
I think that's a good challenging question. Let me think about it. So suppose you're asking me that suppose there's someone today deciding between whether they go to a bank or they go to consulting. How do we decide which is the better suited?
Right.
So yeah, so the first thing I would look at, and I wouldn't put myself in that scenario because I'm not, like I said, I run the consulting, I head it up, but I don't actually go and
Hmm.
consult myself. You know,
Sure.
um, but I was doing more of the consulting, for example, in the API space. So when I was in the banks, I was acting like
Hmm.
a consultant. Uh, but essentially, if someone's looking pure play to say, okay, whether I should join a bank or I should go consulting, um, people who want, and this is what I see, and I have to already caveat that because there's no such thing as a secure job, yeah.
Hmm.
But people who generally want more security and want more consistency to say, okay, they are now belonging to a certain bank and they've got a certain job. That is more where you're looking for a more stable sort of environment. Because when you're going into, let's assume you work for the bank and you go there
Hmm.
as a full-time employee.
Hmm.
Um, versus when you're a consultant and you go to the same place as a consultant, you get assessed with a different sort of scrutiny, right?
Hmm.
So it's almost like you're paying a day rate for someone or you're paying a monthly rate for someone. So naturally, you're going to always be thinking, do I need that person? Yeah.
Right.
Versus an employee, you're not going to say every day that do I need that person. Even if they don't have work for 15 days, you'll say, koi baat nahi, by the time the next project comes, we'll use them for something else. It
Right.
is the Yeah, so that is the biggest difference that someone's got to have that. So if someone has a huge belief in their capability and wants to experience different firms, wants to move around and say, I want to learn and I'm going to really push myself, that is more your consulting person who doesn't really also care about team dynamic. Because you may find a good team, you may not.
Hmm.
Because I might say to you, Akash, tomorrow, if you're working, let's say if I was a consulting firm and you were working, I might say, Akash, tomorrow you need to go to Bank B and start
Hmm.
working there. What is your team? What is your team going to look like? Who's your manager going to be? What are they going to ask you to do?
The
Maybe
whole
they change them.
structure around it.
Yeah, and they may change their mind. So they may say, okay, I
Hmm,
want you to help me with A, but by the time you go this in, no, no, actually I need help with B.
hmm,
So you have to be a little more able to deal with all these things mentally. Whereas in
hmm,
an employment, it's a little more consistent, stable.
right.
So that's the primary difference. But then with the employment, when I even do a lot of coaching, people get bored because they say, I'm doing the same thing for so long. My growth is not happening. I want to become AVP. I want to become VP. I want to become director. And then you get stuck in that vertical growth.
Hmm,
Whereas in the consulting, you're looking at the horizontal expansion because you're going to say, I've done this and I've done this and I've not done this. So you're almost looking to always do more and more types of work.
hmm.
Yeah,
Absolutely makes sense. I got to understand, right? Uh, you know, at the level where you are managing a team, even right now as a consulting. Okay, so I hope at a senior level only you have get access to the banking and understand the risk and delivery management, right? And these are we see as a core component of the banking because these are the base from which they grow their brand. This is where they stabilize themselves. So would you
correct.
like to, from your standpoint view, would you like to talk how complex that is to manage, okay, at that seniority and how effective it is during that time?
Do you mean to manage risk and governance or risk and
Right.
compliance?
Risk and delivery management, how it is how complex it is, okay, and as a senior, how you'll be able to manage it.
I think it's hugely it's difficult to even explain how complex this is because the
Hmm,
point with and they're two totally different things, right? So risk aspect is quite different to delivery, but let me talk about risk first, right? With risk, there is so many different factors you've got to consider because for example, I was at a payments panel about a couple of weeks ago. So if you're talking about payment risk, what is money laundering regulation or what is sanctions and all of that. Now, if you're looking at a global bank or a global whatever provider, the point here becomes okay, you have to understand the various regulations in the various countries that you're dealing with. If you're talking about a
right.
cross-border payment, I need to meet the risk requirements for UK, then I have to meet the risk requirements for whichever is the receiving country. There's so many other factors to be considered. So with
Hmm,
risk, essentially the biggest complexity tends to be is that you're never fully done because by the time you're done, somebody else will change their requirements and somebody will put
right.
more requirements in. And so you're always like just monitoring. It's a bit like flying an airplane where you're constantly looking, okay, where do I, am I running low on petrol or am
It's an
I
agile
going?
circle, right?
Correct. It's an agile circle. Yeah, exactly. You said it better than me. But and then with the delivery, there's always the pressure because when you're trying to deliver something, you've got to bear in mind the risk part, but also
Hmm,
20 other things because then risk becomes a subcomponent. So one is risk has a
right.
life of its own, but in the delivery, risk is a subcomponent because you can't just only be super focused on risk alone. You have to focus on risk, but you've also got to focus on what does the client need? What are the commercials? Can I actually run a viable business delivering this? So if I'm trying to run a consulting firm, but I am not getting the clients to ask me for a certain demand, then how does the delivery suffer? Let's say you come and
Hmm.
you say, okay, you're a technology expert, but if my customer says to me, I'm not looking for a tech expert, what do I do? Do I
Is it
change
a
your skill
viable for
set?
business or not, right?
And if it's not viable, what are you going to do?
Hmm,
So the delivery aspect at the very senior level is all about balancing the odds because, as we say, you can't always do the right thing by everyone all the time, and you have to find the best possible solution that suits everyone.
hmm,
And sometimes it may be upsetting for someone, sometimes it may be upsetting for someone else, but you've always got to keep watching the best possible outcome.
right. Makes sense. And what you're really, one horizon I really like about the thing is that risk is always going to be a part for a bigger picture. It's not everything. Okay. However, it is a portion where we need to be really focused. But as a business, you also need to understand that whether it's right now being profitable to do it, or if it's not profitable, so am I seeing a future where I can see that it's really a business to continue. So these factors really matter, and I think you have been spot on explaining to it. I'll also, want to touch upon one more point. I'll be recently interviewing one of HSBC Chief Controlling Officer. She is Sintha Gunavikrama, if I'm taking her name correct. So she mentioned at the last part of our podcast that we see that people have different capabilities working at the different levels, and somebody is involved with their multi talents and they are good at some 3 to 4 different portions, because they have developed by spending their 10 or 20 years by understanding that verticals. And she sees that single person having good capability uh, must be offered or must be relevant to work with multiple banks. Okay, so she feel that uh, right now we need to look as a resources that is not completely working with me as a full time, but if he is good at something, uh, I can have him at a part time basis. Okay, on the right skill sets that can be fit in for me at the current time. So, how do you see? I want to understand your views on that. People stucking in a full-time job, okay, uh, or getting into working with multiple banks at a part-time level will be suitable because based on what they have built their capabilities from the last 10 or 20 years.
So that it's a great point, and there are various ways to slice this, right? So depending
Hmm,
on what you're working on, and this is where
right.
consulting essentially comes in. So let's assume after June, when I start, let's say, consulting to firms, and I say, okay, Akash, I can help you with this for 1 day a week. Someone else, I can help them for 1 day a week. It's a bit like
Hmm,
coaching, like you're coaching 5 different people on the same things. But the problem that comes in mostly with banks is that banks are just a larger institute. Is that why will I
hmm,
give you my information? Because I know tomorrow you're going to my competitor,
no, right.
right? So
So
there's
there
a
is some.
there's a conflict.
Hmm,
There
makes
could
sense.
be, again, depending on what is it that you're offering, how much. So that's where all the NDAs come into place. Like how much
Right.
information are you privy to? Do you
Within your
have
same line, right?
correct? Because am I going to give you system access for my firm, or are you going to on the same computer be doing work for 5 different companies?
Right. And it
So
will be
that's
a
the
bit hazardous at a bigger level if it's an
it,
R&D.
it's not
Absolutely.
viable. Yeah, it will not be
Hmm,
viable because it will not be allowed. It will not be
hmm,
allowed. So certain times when I have consultants, or if I'm consulting for someone, there will be a clear requirement saying, okay, you cannot do this, non-compete sort of
hmm,
agreements or whatever. So it's a nice concept, and that is where the concepts such as conferences come in. So whether it's this person or anyone else, and they want to find out what is it that everyone else is doing. One is okay, you obviously you go to events, you go to conferences, you learn, you see okay what everyone's doing, and within the right amount you're able to share your
hmm,
issues, your problems, but not actually what you're not what is non-public information that you can't share, of course. So it depends. And in terms of skills, then you've got consulting, right, where you can actually request saying, okay, I need 4 hours of advice on X, and you can always get that.
right. Absolutely makes sense. I'll got a bit idea. You are attending a lot of conferences, as you have said, right? And being at the core level, having a leader around the same. Uh, you have been seen communications around blockchain, CBDC, that is central bank digital currency, crypto in banking. These are right now, I would say, a viral words, that is going, okay, in almost every conferences. And some initial steps also being taken by different countries, okay. So, how you think at the consultant or a fintech domain uh, a leader standpoint that we are going to see blockchain, CBDC, or crypto look like in the next 5 or 10 years down the line, right?
I think that's a
Or
great
even the
point.
current, please.
Even the current.
Yeah, even at the current scenario and the future, 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah.
down the
I
line?
think currently probably it's more it's just the acceptance is probably not at the degree where I mean there's trillions in the market being, moved in crypto assets, but and there's large frauds and large scams as well and all of that. So currently, while there's a huge, how do I put it? Like there's a huge amount in the transaction volumes. I don't have the percentage off the top of my head, but the percentage of people, the last I saw was how many people have crypto or at NFTs. I think India it's at like 9%, or I think Singapore 5-6%. So in terms of
Hmm.
the mass usage, it's not there. I can't today go down and buy a packet of bread with with any
Yeah,
of the
right.
crypto assets, right?
That really makes
So
sense. Yep.
yeah, so there'll be an inflection point where it's going to happen. It's going to happen, but I would probably say, okay, 5 years is ambitious in
Longer to
my
think
view.
of, right?
Yeah, is
Yep.
ambitious in my
Makes
view. It's
sense.
probably going to take longer. Why? Because not because it's not there as an established industry, but because to the user. I mean, today if you talk to, we're not going to eliminate a whole lot of population who doesn't understand anything about this. So a lot of times, initially when credit cards came out, we say, oh, no one is going to need cash anymore, but we still use cash.
Right.
So I think what will happen is there'll be obviously crypto assets, or there will be CBDCs, and people will be using it, but there will be more edge cases. And you saw the CBDC trial. Where was it? China somewhere, where essentially now
Right.
people were given their loans or something in CBDC. So there's no other way that you can take that benefit except to have the wallet, right? So
Hmm.
if there's going to be forced adoption, then of course adoption will increase or pick up. But if we do it just to leave it, I mean, human beings are keen on technology, but also we are lazy if there is not a reason to move.
Right.
So if you can go out and buy your bread and you have the rupees in your
Comfortability.
hand.
Right.
Correct. If you've got your, I mean, digital wallet, I probably understand. Okay, it's very easy to use. So you would say, okay, why should I carry my card if my card is in my wallet? I get that
Hmm.
proposition. But if your fiat is working for a Joe Blogs like you and me at the high street level, my kid, why would they care to adopt another currency? So it's about,
Relevancy and right.
yeah, so it's about, the discomfort of the change, but then it has to be an attractive reason to change. So
Hmm.
who was primarily into crypto, as you know, is probably people who just want more anonymity or who want to try out new innovation. But how are
Hmm.
you going to get the masses into that? Same point comes with electric vehicles, right? To say, okay, how do you, in order to get more people to adopt electric vehicles, you have to have the infrastructure around it. You have to
Hmm.
have charging stations, stuff like that. So if the infrastructure develops, it will pick up, but it will all depend on how easy we make it.
Yep. Absolutely. It makes sense. So one is the relevancies. And as you have said that, and I really like the kind of lazy word that you used. We really don't want to change ourselves with the kind of habits we are into.
Correct.
And figuring out to look for some new kind of changes. If it's really suitable environment, then it will be easy. If it's not a force way that is being done, as you said, in China. Uh, if I can give a great example, that is UPI that is happening within India.
Correct.
Right. It's not a force one, but it has been much easy and capable adoption that it has not even spread within India, but it's crossing the globe. And it's aligning with what you're trying to say, that build an ecosystem that people say that moving to that really makes sense, that what I'll be adopting or I have right now. Makes sense. Thanks for sharing. I'll take it ahead, okay. And further, I'd like to tap on a bigger or a complex thing. You have heard of ChatGPT, right? And even the AI innovation is happening. And right now, we have seen a lot of conflicting interest, a lot of job downturn, right? Not with the small companies only, but even Google, Amazon, or Apple,
Meta.
uh, right? Meta, we have seen something. Not even if they are firing, but they are stuck at a level where they have freezed a lot of their talent onboarding. So we have seen these kind of things. So, how do you like to say around these innovations? Okay, and the job market will be. Uh, if you'll brief around the fintech or a consulting ecosystem, that also makes sense.
I think I'll probably keep it really broad, but essentially the point here being
Hmm.
there's two or three different topics in this. So the first is the tech layoffs and things like that, right? A lot of that
Right.
is not essentially just because of the automation. It is the wider part about COVID where they had mass, intake. And then
Hmm.
suddenly you say, okay, the pandemic is sort of, the WHO declared is no longer, the pandemic is officially over, right? So now the point becomes how do you drive your efficiency? So it's more about the first point I was making is that is it commercially viable? Now, if you look at
Hmm.
what Elon Musk is doing with Twitter, that has nothing to do with automation. It has nothing to do with
Right.
the chat GPT or anything. It is about seeing the viable. I think how many people did he let go? 60% or something, like a large percent of the
Almost
firm,
right.
right?
Hmm.
Now, if you really look at it, he's literally sleeping on the sofa in there, trying to fix things there. And
Hmm.
it is about saying, okay, how is this firm going to make money? Whether I'm going to take money by blue ticks or whether I'm going to change my algorithms, I'm going to share my code. What is it? So it's more about now getting over the high of, okay, we're this big tech and we just need to hire people. It's about, okay, what is the long term viable proposition? Yeah.
Hmm.
Second part with the automation, then it's about saying, okay, if ChatGPT is going to do five things for you, great.
Hmm.
What new work will it introduce? So and then
Right.
today only I was speaking to someone else. I mean, he's a CTO in a different firm, but we were having lunch. We were talking about this. Is that it's not going to be that okay? Suddenly there's no requirement. So there are no more. You're not using horses to commute. You're using cars, but you've
Hmm.
got we still commute in different sort of jobs evolve like manufacturing cars. Then you say okay, but therefore you need drivers. But then if they're going to be electric vehicles, then you're going to need another skill, which is probably going to be I don't know. But there will be always a need to say okay, here's a new piece of technology,
Hmm.
a new ecosystem will evolve around that. How do you use
Right.
this technology to compete? Because if everybody is going to rely on ChatGPT to solve all the problems, then who's unique?
Right. Makes
So
sense. Absolutely.
today I write. I mean, I can. Everyone says, "Oh, why are you writing?" You can just put the question in ChatGPT, and it will give you the full answer. But I write. I still write, and people still read.
Right. Makes sense. Yeah, it's the
Yeah,
sort of interest that I have some capability. Okay. And I'd like to express it in words. I'm not going trying means if I'll say by my words, I'm not trying to give that power to ChatGPT. It's okay that it can do, but why I lose my interest around that ecosystem which I have built with time, or why I lose my express of showing how I feel in by penning down. Right.
correct. Yeah, and if
Absolutely.
you're the fact that you're talking to me, you're recording this podcast. What
Hmm.
is it that we are covering that ChatGPT could not answer? But people will still listen. No?
Right.
They
Absolutely.
could put the question in ChatGPT
Hmm.
and get the answers, but we want to listen because as humans, we connect with humans.
Right.
We don't want to just be connecting with machines. It's good to leverage that information to broaden your
Hmm.
perspective, but you cannot limit yourself to that.
Yeah, and I also like to, tell you one strange and important fact about it. That when you're talking with a person, okay, after certain conversation, you can understand in what mood that person is, and you can ask, "Are you feeling okay or are you feeling low?" You cannot ask with that chat GPT, right? So that's a very different standpoint, and it makes sense that emotional connect is not possible everywhere, and it must be an human to human interactions where people can understand and look it in a right way. I got your please.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely agree with you. And exactly like same, if we have a call on Teams or we have a call on Zoom, okay, it's not the best as having one face-to-face conversation, but at least it's a human connect, right? You're not
Hmm.
going to say, okay, this is all about purely just the technology. The technology becomes a lever to explore the human connect.
Right. Absolutely makes
Yeah.
sense. We are at the end of our podcast. There is one more point I would like to know uh, around the innovation, even in consulting and fintech. So, how you see that innovation gonna happen? Means moving ahead, how the role is getting evolved. If you would like to share, some viewpoint, okay, by seeing the data or by the way you are managing the team by understanding uh, these are some sort of areas where people are really interested and companies are really looking forward to it. and it will grow. If you'd like to talk around that.
That's great. I think what that's a very big question. Now, the biggest thing that I would probably say here is that as as firms are looking to cut their cost,
Hmm.
their initial consulting spend reduces. Because as I mentioned in
Right.
the first part, if you're a contractor or a consultant versus you're a permanent employee, the more likely person to go will be the contractor or the external person, right?
Hmm.
Um, but the trend, it's cyclical in my view. So if anyone is looking or thinking about these things, what happens is you go through these periods of crunch, right? Saying, okay, I don't have the money because of inflation, because of interest rates, because China is taking time to reopen, whatever other tensions about recession, people will withdraw, and then there will be more trend back to saying, okay, no, but actually we do need certain work, we do need advice, like you said, even if they're taking the technology, who can help me
Hmm.
make the best of
Right.
that technology. So with fintechs and with consulting, I would imagine that it's a cyclical thing, but the changes there will be, one is the geographies.
Hmm.
So somehow a lot of people tell me, and this is just purely nothing to do with my current role or anything, but generally as I watch the industry, I think India is becoming quite, I don't know the right word, but more, first there was a large cost advantage. And now the
Hmm.
cost advantage is somehow diminishing
Hmm.
in a lot of roles because
Right.
the quality is, so India could stand more on the quality as opposed to saying, okay, we've got a significant cost advantage. And there are other geographies emerging in terms of, okay, there's a better cost proposition, which I've seen from, various pieces of reading as well. Could just be other Asian sort of territories. Then sometimes depend, so it all sort of, I would say one part is that, okay, there will still be demand, whether
Hmm.
you're fintech or whether you're consulting, there will be demand. But the two things that will change, one is, like I said, the geography, the geographical split.
Hmm.
And the next thing I lost my train of thought, but the next thing really will be the skills that will be required. So first might have been like different skills which will eventually be automated, but there might be another set of skills that is required. So for anyone looking to work in that sort of environment, I think there's this constant need to upskill yourself, because you can no
Right.
longer say that I've always done this and I always do that, because that skill was, it could fade. And it's important, like if you're maybe helping with payments or something, it's to understand DLT, to understand crypto, to understand CBDCs, whatever else. So you've got to keep that curiosity alive. Final
Hmm.
point with also, as you mentioned, with fintechs, I also see a bit of consolidation coming. So with the funding sort of drying up sometimes, or just the post-COVID phase, there's so many little firms.
Hmm.
And the other day I was seeing like payment propositions and PSPs. It's so difficult sometimes to even differentiate between two companies because they are very identical
Right.
in what they offer. So
Right.
you will see exactly to the point that lady was making, as you said, there's a horizontal thread there saying everybody's got the same problem. So maybe then you want to say, okay, with everybody having the same problem, is there a case for consolidation? As you've seen with Signature, SVB, they've got absorbed by larger firms.
Hmm.
So there
Right.
could be some of that happening.
Absolutely makes sense. And even I can means right now, if I'll look around the same, I'm still a bit confused, but I'm just trying to understand that bigger picture by talking to leaders like you or somebody I'll be inviting in this podcast. So thanks for sharing.
Thank
And
you.
it's been interesting to having inviting you and talking around the different lines. Okay. Uh, Anything at last you want to say to the listeners? Okay. Uh,
I think
I
if
can,
I
I can,
go
yeah,
on, you go,
please.
you go.
Yeah. So, you know, right now, if you see the whole ecosystem we are seeing within India or even outside India, even in US, okay, there are categories of obese or overweight people. Okay. And we see commonly within our ecosystem that some people are there, right? So anything, because you are into fitness, I see some of your videos, okay. I would like to say how they can be in the right shape in this kind of times where they are coming out of a lot of stress apart from what COVID have done to them. So anything you'd like to say? And right,
I think
please.
the point about fitness is the way I see it, or the way I would suggest to anyone, is that don't give it an option. So
mm.
even the other day, I was seeing Sushmita Sen. I don't know if you saw that. She suffered a massive heart attack, right? And what
Yeah, I
did the
got to heard
doctor
about it,
say?
right?
Yeah, and the doctor said she survived because she's so fit. So the point here, and I see so many of these, on Instagram or whatever. Like, I was seeing Zina Taman that day. I mean, how old is she? And she's so fit, right? The point
Mm,
here is that you can't say, okay, these people haven't been through stresses in their life. So you have to be consistent. Fitness is not like, saying, okay, today I have no stress, I'm going to be fit. It has to be a constant. So today
right.
morning I had to go whatever 11 o'clock lunch, brunch, but still I woke up. I went and did my 3 kilometers. Whether I'm stressed, not stressed, does not matter. So you have to
Mm,
put your thinking away. Wake up, wear your kit,
right.
get out of the door. That's it. No need to
Right.
think. No, no,
It must
so
be your daily, yep. It must be a
it's
part of your
automated.
daily routine, right?
Correct. And it is that your part which you put on, like automated processes, right? So you almost say,
Mm,
okay, when I sleep, so I've got my AirPods here as an example. When I sleep, already put my AirPods on charge. Okay, because I
mm,
know in the morning I'm going to need my phone, I'm going to need my AirPods because when I go to the treadmill, I need these two things. So it becomes
mm,
your mental routine. And even like eating, for example, every morning for breakfast, I have overnight oats. When you soak the
mm,
oats in dahi, so dahi, like I don't like milk so much. But so by 9 p.m., I'm thinking I have to soak my oats. I have to put it in the fridge. That's it. So I don't have to, so the stress actually reduces because you're not spending time thinking about these things.
mm,
You just like automated habits. You say, like if you read about like habit making, habit formation. Moment
mm,
I'm making dinner, I'm already thinking, okay, I have to put the oats in the fridge. I put the oats in the fridge. Morning I wake up, I just go to the gym, I do my 3K, come back, and I mean, my habits will change when I go to London because it's a different gym, different kit that I use. Over here, it's a small gym, so I know running is my best thing. So I'll do that, come back, I eat my oats. That's it. So you actually take out the stress from the system. You people say, how do you live in Singapore without a maid? Singapore, everyone pretty much has got a maid. But why do you need a maid to soak oats? Like, can you not do? You know what I
absolutely.
mean?
Makes sense.
So I keep my
Right.
life so simple that I don't need that extra bit to say, okay, every day I want a different breakfast. No, I don't need a different breakfast. So I'm very repetitive in my habits. As you've probably seen some people, they wear the same sort of outfit. So if you ever even go into like my Instagram or anywhere, as you've probably seen, I repeat a lot of my wardrobe. I don't have any jewelry. Like literally, I just do not. It's just not something I do. Like I wear earrings, but that's it. Like you'll never see me saying, okay, carrying like a watch or a gadget. Nothing. So the more you can
Makes sense.
simplify it
Keep
life, the
myself
more you have
free.
time. What?
Keep yourself free. Keep myself free in most of the time, right?
Yeah, then you have the time, then you have the
Mm,
brain space to work on things. Otherwise, you're just thinking, okay, iska wo karna hai, ye toot gaya, ye kharidna hai, ye karna hai.
right.
I don't have all that in my life. I'm not bothered.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. That two things I really liked and you talked about it. One is that keep the health as a priority and keep it in your daily routine. Missing 1 day or 2 day don't going to affect it, but missing it for a very long time and giving it priority on certain days will make you complex. And health is something that you have to be prioritized on a daily basis. That makes
Yeah.
sense. And yeah, keeping yourself free, having to giving priorities to gadgets or whatever things that you're carrying, have it if it's really useful, but keep it as minimal as it possible, right? To keep your mental space free, to give enough time to other factors that really matter in your life.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And what you were
Hmm,
saying, the final point there, when you're saying the gadgets, right? So if you just change your habits instead, like today when I went for lunch, I
hmm,
didn't order the taxi. I walked to the bus
hmm.
stop. Now I'm not counting if I walked 100 steps, 200 steps. I don't care. I just have a habit saying
Right.
go by bus. Take the
Hmm,
bus, and so you will walk to the bus, you'll walk back from the bus stop. It's just habits.
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Makes sense. And thanks for bringing all those insights. It was really nice to,
Thank you.
first of all, bringing you here. Okay. And spending that on our time. Hope you have enjoyed it at least.
Thank you. I enjoyed it thoroughly, and I hope the
Sure.
listeners, you enjoyed it as well.
Absolutely.
So
Sure. Okay.
cool.
Thanks. Have
Thank
a
you,
great day.
Akash.
Bye.
Take care, you too. Bye bye.